Hey everybody, Daniel Kaplan here. So in this video, I'll be running through the underwriting of the first ever rental property that I ever bought. I bought this property, I believe it was in 2022 when I was 19 years old as a sophomore in college. So really quick, I'll show you the address to this property. Is this it? No. Oh yeah, here's the property that I bought. And as we can see, I bought this thing on this October of 2022 for about 50K, but it was more like 42K after seller credits. And as you can see some of the pictures of this property. Not too shabby. So let's dive into the underwriting of this property. So firstly, we bought this property for about, and this would be raw, unfiltered underwriting. Hopefully you can get some takeaways for this and how you can underwrite your own properties yourself, but let's dive into it. So we bought this property for about $43,000. I know it says 49, but we got seller credits due to the repairs that were needed. So we bought this thing for 43K. The repairs that were needed on this was about $13,000. We had closing costs of about $2,000, and I think just say other costs about $1,000. With like our LLC creation, we did some consulting. So in total, our total cost basis for this project was a whopping $59,000. And we ended up getting a private money lender who helped us out with this deal, and we are giving them a 10% annualized return. So PML annual return was about 10%, but our timeline here was about 6 months. So the actual interest accrued was about half of that. So call it about 5%. So we owed at the refi the 59,000 plus the interest, and boom. So we owed our PML about 62 grand at that refi. So that was our total cost basis for this project. And now let's quickly run through what the stabilized numbers look like, what our cash flow looks like, how much we pulled off on the kind of refi, how much cash we left in the deal, all that fun stuff. So we knew that this property, we ended up renting it for Section 8. So our Section 8 rent for this property was a 3-bedroom property, was for $1,300. So let's run through what that underwriting looks like. So really quick, and again, just a good rule of thumb as you're doing your underwriting, just try and put headers and label your data so it is easier for you to navigate, easier for you to analyze. So as we see here, this was our purchase overview. And now we're going to look at our stabilized overview. And we can do this on a per month or annual basis. So let's do this. Monthly, annual. However you spell that. So we had a Section 8 rent was $1,300. We had a property manager that we paid 10% to. So that was about $130. And really quick, just going to fix this formatting. Format numbers. Let me move my face away. And again, just this is a little bit extra, but easier way to visualize your numbers and your data here. So let's find the one that I like. Go with this. So we had our property manager for about $1,300. So 10% of the $1,300, about $130. So our gross rental income was the sum of these. Boom. And now let's break down our operating expenses. So our operating expenses for this property was as follows. We had insurance, we had taxes, we had repairs, we had utilities, and what else did we have? Occasionally lawn care, I would say. And I think that was it, actually. So total operating expenses. So for repairs, again, like we wanted to be a little bit more conservative over here. So our repairs on this, let's say about 10% per month. Utilities ran us for about, I would say $100 a month. Lawn care about $50 a month. Our repairs, like I said, was 10% of our income. Taxes ran us for It was property taxes are cheap in Birmingham, about $60, and insurance about $78. So if we quickly want to annualize those figures, and in total, our total operating expenses of owning this property was about $418. And note though, once we had the property rented out, our utilities were zero. So if we're looking at our stabilized yield, we'll just keep it like this. So let me just quickly do this, boom. And again, just so I can make it easier for us to analyze, just add some quick lines. Oops. So this put us at our net operating income as the sum of these two figures. So, and again, this is before our mortgage payment, but as we saw here, pretty good net operating income. So now, something very important to look at is our refi. What happened there? So let's make some more space so we could dive into that. So let's look at the refi overview. So at the refi, our ARV, we ended up appraising for about $90,000 on this thing. And then what we did is we went and got a 75% LTV DSCR loan at an interest rate of about 7%. I think it was more like 6.8% actually, with an amorts of 30. So let's look at our loan overview here. So our loan amount was 75% of that 90K. And as we see, we owed our PML 6.2K, but we got a loan for 67. So we actually profited. So profit at the refi, as we see here, we actually paid our lender back and made about 5.5K at the refi. So was not too bad, especially for our first deal. Super, super exciting. And let's look at kind of our monthly payment on this thing. Again, just so we can run those numbers there. So our monthly payment, for some reason, the key is not showing up. Give me a second. Okay, so our rate was at 6.8%. Number of periods, again, 30-year AM. So our monthly payment was about $440. So quickly, our debt was this negative figure. So as we see here, our net cash flow on this deal was about $400 per month, or about 5K per year. So again, like what a lot of people want to do is, hey, let's go and look at what our cash on cash return is, or our ROI was. But for us, as we see here, I mean, it was an infinite ROI. We had zero capital tied into this deal. And that was the power of buying this deal at the right price, because as we see here, hey, we got this thing for such a deep discount and got it at such a good basis where, hey, the numbers worked out where we pretty much had an infinite ROI. So this is what that first deal really looks like here. And again, just so I can make it a little bit more visually appealing, give me 1 second and again, super raw, unfiltered of how I like to visualize this data. So as we see, we have our full overview here. So let's quickly run through this again, just to give you guys a quick synopsis on what these returns looked like, all of that fun stuff. So as we see, again, quick recap on this deal. We bought this thing for $43K, had repairs of $13K, closing costs 2, other costs of $1K. So our total cost basis for this project was $59,000. We went and got a PML for 10%. This was a 6-month project. So our total interest accrued over those 6 months was 5%, meaning at the refi, this is what we owed our PML. So now we went and looked and saw, hey, our ARV was 90K. We got a loan for about 75%, 6.8% interest rate, 30-year amortization. So that means that the bank went and gave us a loan for about 67 and a half. But we only owed our PML about 62. So we actually profited about 5.5K on that refi. And also, really quick note, something very, very important to consider is looking at our equity that we had tied into the deal. So not only did I get paid 5.5K, but I also got 22 grand in forced equity from this deal. So I made 5K and I had 22.5K in equity. And now looking at our cash flow, we see that, hey, on a monthly basis, we are net of everything about $411. And this was the first deal I ever bought, and it is probably one of the best deals I've ever bought. Absolutely home run. Hope this was helpful. And again, if anyone wants this template, I will put the link in the comments if any of you want to quickly plug in your own numbers into this deal and see for yourself kind of what those returns would look like. So hope this was helpful. And yeah, just for anyone who's interested in buying real estate, again, I did this while I was a sophomore in college. So if I can do it, you probably can too. It's not that fucking hard.